Bright Cutie. Every student matters.
Hello students. So now let's continue with our topic here that we were reading, that is causes of the revolution. Now before the students, you have learnt about the intellectual awakening as the first cause that led to the French Revolution. And when we are talking about the intellectual awakening, it means that we were talking about the great philosophers and the theories that they propagated, right? The theories that they tried to spread among the common people, right? They were the main source of this whole revolution. Now let us try to understand some other causes of the French Revolution as well. So the second cause here, as you have already learned, was related to wars, right? Participation of France in various wars also led to the depreciation in treasury, let's say, या फिर reduction in the treasury of the king, right? So here, one of the reasons is the wars that they were participating into. And the best example here is that of the American Revolution. And the timeline is 1775 to 1783. Now, if you remember students, before this, we already have talked about Louis XVI, right? While we were discussing about the causes of French Revolution. And here we saw that when he ascended the throne in the year 1774 at the age of 20, what did he see? He saw, or he got to see empty treasury, correct? Yes. And one of the reasons for this financial stress were the wars in which they were participating. So when we were talking about Louis XVI or era before that, we saw that all these kings, they tried to empty the treasury by spending a lot in the wars, financing all these wars. So American Revolution that almost took place between this period here, we see that revolt of English colonies in North America, it served as an inspiration for French and also a revolution that started here. Okay? Now, here students, when we are talking about English colonies in North America, now you have learnt a bit in modern India about the British rule in our country. So right now you are aware with this fact that the British Empire, they were establishing colonies everywhere around the world. Not only India but at different places, right? So in North America as well, colonies were established by the English here. So the French, they now decided to help the American colonies against England. Now, what was the main reason for the support of French? For whom? For Americans. So, they had to take revenge for taking Canada from them. Now, after the 7 Years' War, now these things are not mentioned in the book, but just giving a brief idea. What happened? When they were defeated, French were defeated, the region of Canada was taken away from them. Okay? And due to this, they had a vengeance against the English people or against England in simple terms. So, when they saw that American colonies, they are trying to gain independence against England, therefore they decided to form an alliance with the Americans, right? So, in the year 1778, basically a treaty of alliance was passed, and through this alliance, France and America, they came together and they fought against the English people or England. So, when we are talking about this alliance, it means that French kings, they are involved in the war. When they are involved in the war, it means that they are financing the war. So, a lot of money was invested here. In what? In arms and ammunitions. Again, keeping or taking care of the soldiers who were involved in the war. So, therefore, money was required there. So, a lot of portion of the treasury was now gone in war, in financing the war. Therefore, it became one of the reasons. Why? Because now the French kings, they decided to pose a heavy tax on common people. Okay? So when common people have to give those heavy taxes, when they have to pay those heavy dues, definitely they are going to get angry against the king or with the king, right? So it became one of the reasons or the causes for French Revolution. Now, however, it caused the French great financial loss. Also, the success of American rebels, it served as an incentive to the revolutionary theory in France. Now, somehow we are seeing here that America, it gained independence, but it also became a source of inspiration, or here the revolutionary ideas were now growing in France as well, right? So this is how you have to remember this part here. Now, focusing on the economic factors. Students, you already have learned a lot of points related to heavy taxation, right? So, French system of taxation was both unfair and unjust. Definitely. When we are talking about heavy taxes or dues that were being imposed on whom? On common people. Now, do you remember the French society? Yes, we talked about the three states. The first state, that is the clergy. The second state, that is the nobility. And the third state, the common people, including various people like people belonging to various professions, lawyers, teachers, professors, and so on, right? We also have the landless laborers in this. We have the peasants, artisans, farmers, right? So all these people, they came under the third state. But what was the main point that you have learned there? We learned that only the common people, that is people or the social class belonging to the third state, they had to pay taxes. But the social class belonging to the first and the second state, they did not have to pay any taxes. Right? So here it means that all this burden was on whom? On the common people. Therefore, this system of taxation was unfair and unjust in France. So the common people, they had to pay a lot of taxes. Now if I ask you, what are these taxes? Do you remember those taxes, students? You might say that tithe and tithe. These were the two important taxes here, right? So one was taken by the church, another was the direct tax that was given to the state. Okay? So these taxes that were paid to the church, to the state, right, and nobility, they also had feudal privileges. Feudal dues were paid to the noble class. Now, apart from this, common people were also feeling pressurized. Why? Because they had to pay salt tax. Apart from all these tax, salt tax was another important tax that was being paid by the common people. Now, do you think salt tax is good or necessary here? No, students. Now, common salt is something that is consumed by all, whether it is a rich person, whether it is a poor person. So, taking tax on it, is it a good thing? Definitely not. Now, people were enraged by this as well. Now, wars with other European powers put a heavy burden on common people. Now, there might be a question in your mind that how are common people affected by this? Now, imagine the situation, students. In France, a lot of money has been put in the American gain of independence or war of independence here, right? So, French has given a lot of money there. Now, they do not have their own money, right? So, what are they going to do? How are they going to extract money from their own area, own territory? They are going to put heavy taxes on the common people, right? So this is how, due to these wars, common people were also affected, right? So this is how you have to remember this point. Now, some other problems that were being faced by the common people there. Now, during this period, what are we seeing? Let's say during this period, that is from 1715 to 1789. Now, from the period 1715 to 1789, we see that there is a population increase from 23 million to about 28 million. So in these many years, we see that there is a growth of 5 million people, population increase that has taken place in France. Now, these are some of the basic points that we have to understand, right? We have to apply our common sense here. Now, when the population is increasing, what will happen? The demand for food grains is also going to increase because all these people, they need food to survive. This is the basic necessity, right? So as a result of the population increase, we see that there is an increase in the demand for food grains, right? Now, since there is an increase in demand for food grains, we see that there is more production. But this production was not in pace with the growing population. It means food was less and population was more, growing more and more in the country, right? So therefore, people here, they were facing the scarcity of food, okay? Now, more production is happening, but it is not suffice for the population there. So therefore, the wage laborers, right? They were also not earning a lot in order to pay for these food grains. So there is a situation of price rise in the region. So the price of all these commodities, it was increased. So here just understand the cycle. First we see population increase. Due to this population increase, there is demand of food grains, increase in the demand of food grains. Now, when we see that the production is not in pace with the population, so therefore it leads to price increase. The wage laborers, they are not earning enough in order to pay these high prices. So as a result of it, what is happening here? It leads to a widened gap between the rich and the poor people. Okay? And this intense situation, it leads to an extreme situation here, that is the situation of subsistence crisis. So this is the main point that you have to keep in mind, because somehow it also becomes one of the reasons, one of the causes for the French Revolution. Now this is an extreme situation where the basic necessity of life is being endangered, right? So the people, they do not have good food, right? So the basic necessity there, they do not have money, they do not have job, unemployment is on rise, there is a widened gap between rich and poor. So therefore it creates an extreme situation, that is this subsistence crisis. So basic necessity is endangered in this particular situation. Now, this is what we have learnt in the economic factors here. Let us talk about the rise of middle class. Now students, before this, we have talked about the intellectuals, right? The philosophers. Somehow, they influence the middle class. Why are we talking about middle class this much? Because it was the middle class only that spearheaded the revolution in some sense. So these middle class people, they started the revolution, they acted against the king and they challenged the authority of the king, right? We are going to learn about it when we will understand the outbreak of the revolution there. But let us first understand the role of middle class in causing the revolution here. So 18th century, it saw the emergence of middle class who had earned wealth through inland and overseas trade and manufacture of goods. Okay, so we are talking about 18th century here. So in 18th century, what are we seeing? That there is an emergence of middle class. Before this, when we were talking about the third estate, we know that common people are included in that. So in that, we can include the big businessmen, right? These are the rich businessmen. In fact, there were some small businessmen also there. But here we see that during this period in middle class, there were people who were wealthy and also they earned their wealth through trade. That can be inland or overseas trade and through the manufacture of goods. It means that these people, they have some kind of power, though it is limited, but they hold some kind of power here because they have wealth and also they were educated. Okay. So the third state, it also included professions such as lawyers, teachers, authors, administrative officials, and so on. So all these professional people, they now were building a new idea among themselves. Now what was that? So according to them, no group in society should be privileged by birth. Rather, it should depend on merit. So this is the gist that you have to understand, that what ideas they were having in their mind here. So they believe that there should be the end of privileges that were being enjoyed by whom? By the first and second state. That means we are talking about the clergy and the noblemen. Yes. So all these privileges should come to an end. No one should be given privileges by birth. They believed in liberty, equality, freedom. They talked about these things. Why? Because they were also influenced by the philosophies of these great philosophers. Right, students? And also they were the new educated class who also had wealth. So they also said that this should depend, that this whole idea should be based on merit. Who should get these privileges? It should be basically based on merit and not by birth. So they were challenging the existing system here. This is how we see that middle class plays a very important role in the French Revolution. Now, three topics that we have understood here, that is, the first one is our role of middle class, then we talked about the economic factors, and we also talked about American Revolution. Now coming to the question part here, there is a question, that is, how far was the subsistence crisis responsible for the French Revolution? Examine. Now here you have to understand this question. Here we are talking about subsistence crisis, right? Here we are talking about subsistence crisis. So at first you can define the situation here. I already have given you the definition. So this is an extreme situation in which the basic necessity of life is endangered. Now, in order to make this statement understandable, what we have to do here? We have to talk about the whole cycle that we learned right now. Now, I'll tell you in brief here. Population increase, correct? With the population increase in demand of food, right? Food grains. Then what are we seeing? That production is not keeping in pace with the growing population. So there is a situation of price rise. Then we see that the wage laborers, they were not able to earn in order to pay such high price. It led to widened gap between rich and poor. And at last but not the least, all this situation cumulative here, it led to the subsistence crisis. So once you have written all these points here, you can now justify it by saying that all this situation, it worsened the condition of the middle class, the common people, and therefore they were not happy with the growing grim situation there, and somehow it was responsible for the French Revolution, right, to some extent. Now, the next question is, explain the role of middle class in the French Revolution. Now, we just have read it right, right? So, when we are talking about middle class, what are you going to say? 18th century saw the emergence of middle class who had wealth, right? So, I am just giving the keywords here. They had wealth through trade, that is inland and overseas, and also they were educated. Third state also included people from various professions such as lawyers, authors, government officers, and so on. Also, they believed in the idea that there should be no privileges by birth and it should rather be based on merit. Now, how you have to justify it? You have talked about these important points here. So, all these people, the middle class people, now they were also influenced by the ideas of the great philosophers, right? They propagated the ideas or they emphasized on liberty, equality, freedom, and with these ideas, they were the group that spearheaded or they started the whole French Revolution, right? So they initiated and they challenged the government, the system, the authority. Okay? So these are some of the points that you have to mention here.